Here's another thing I want to ask you. Why are people more afraid of looking poor, than actually being poor? You know, like, a lot of people really don't want to have that look of being poor, but they can be poor and be okay as long as they don't look poor. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, the keeping up with the Joneses thing is real. And I think it's just deeply embedded in us. It's called social status, class. Upper class, middle class, lower is kind of how we describe it here in the States. And I think it's every culture has it at some level. I don't think there's like 10 tiers in any culture. It's probably pretty small if I had to guess. Unfortunately, in some countries, there's only two. You're either poor as hell or you're wealthy. So it's really the fear of fitting in. And if we look at us from a time when we were in much smaller groups as humans, the tribe is a very important thing because it means I'm accepted. It means I need to prove my worth and how useful I am to the people around me because I become an integral part of whether we all survive or not. Now, we're in a modern society, but we still have this behavior of sort of mimicking that in a way. Some people outgrow it and some people don't. And all I can tell you is if you're stuck in it and you don't want to let go of it, you're probably going to get to the end of your working career and you're probably going to be struggling to pay your bills.
There are a lot of people who are heading into that point where I've talked to one person who I knew who made some poor financial choices in retirement and had to go back to work. And they were in their late 60s.
Wow.
And they're having to work full time. So this isn't something to play around with. I mean, you can really end up in these situations. So you always have to be cognizant of it, as you're going through. The next area I do want to ask you is, can you give some insight on how chasing external validation is often masking sort of some internal insecurity? I know this is sort of a psychological question, not a financial question, but can you think about that? Because we all like the praise when we do something or we felt like we accomplished something. You were talking about cars earlier. If we buy a new car, we take a picture of it because we want people to see it and give us a compliment. But is that all part of our insecurities? What are your thoughts?
If you're a young person, I'll cut you some slack, as we all do. Maybe up into your late teens, 19. But when you hit 20, this is just a number. It doesn't mean anything. You have to get to a point where you turn a corner because in the end, when you deal with people in your life and they see that you seek external validation, they perceive you as weak and they will take advantage of you. I don't mean knock you over the head and steal your wallet. Social manipulation, you'll end up in a lower ranking in order in their mind for promotion, for attention, for do they value your opinion, your thoughts, and your ideas? This is a really broad subject, but we can keep it like first principle. It's okay until you're 19, in my opinion, but once you hit 20, you need to start growing the hell up. And unfortunately, some people never do. And I try to be mindful to cut people slack. But, we're living in a world here in the United States where too many people have never learned this lesson. And I'm not, cutting any slack to the banks that sell us all the debt and all that, but we do sign on that dotted line. Nobody puts a gun to our head. So it's a discipline that has to be developed. It takes commitment and it takes discipline. And that's why you look at your grandma or your aunt and your uncle and you think, man, they bought this house back in the 1970s and they're still living in it. And you may laugh with your siblings and go, they've never changed the carpet. Well, that's why they got a fat 401k and they've been driving the same car for 25 years because they don't buy crap. And they got the same dining room set and they got the same dinette set. That's why they've got money.
I guess to use an extreme example, basically piggybacking off what you just said, they say Warren Buffett bought his house in, I think, 1958, and he still lives in that house.
And think of this. If we look at the house, it's become a status symbol. I get that. I don't fault anybody for that. But let's look at the utility value of the house. Like the utility value of my shed, it stores tools. It has nothing to do with me as a man. It has nothing to do with my social standing. It doesn't have anything to do with anything other than storing tools. If you can get that way in your mind about your car and your house, you're going to be way ahead of your peers, way ahead of your peers. I have a rake in my shed. It has a utility value to rake whatever I need to rake. And when I'm done, I stick it back in the shed and I lock the door. I don't carry the rake around with me and tell all my friends and neighbors, look at this rake I bought. Look at me. I've got the best and most expensive rake. It's ridiculous. And psychologically, it's no different with a house, with a car, with jewelry, with clothing, or whatever it is.